Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. I dare say that on most weekends, our students will go to a movie, go to a ball game, go out to dinner. But my two guests today like to dress up in Civil War uniforms and go to the woods, no matter how cold or no matter how hot. They are Cody Sheets and Alex Whitworth, both from Livingston County. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
The first question, why do you do this?
Well, I like to teach the history, and it gets out of the house. When you're involved in this, you meet some really good friends, and eventually, after you've been doing it as long as we have, basically them friends become a second family, and there ain't a thing you wouldn't do for each other. And I love teaching the history, showing kids what their ancestors did. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, like he said, you know, just teaching the history to the people that don't know it. They don't understand how the soldiers lived. I mean, I like going in and just living exactly how they lived, only having one blanket and ate what they eat, and just being as close, realistic as possible.
Now, the uniforms are very authentic, at least as far as I can tell. They're pretty expensive, aren't they?
Yeah.
So what have you got tied up approximately in these uniforms?
What do I have tied up? Well, I'll start with mine. Mine's more expensive, as in like the boots. His boots are around $250. Just for
and those are absolutely authentic Civil War
absolutely.
Era cavalry boots.
Exactly. You'll see a lot of guys. Show you they'll have a band around here. It'll be a 3-piece. This is actually a 2-piece boot, and that's authentic as possible. And the jacket alone, that's another $150 to $200.
And then your uniform would be approximately?
Altogether, approximately about $550. Because, I mean...
And that wouldn't count your weapons, right?
Oh, no, definitely not.
Yeah. So, in a bit, we're going to have you all talk about soldier life in the Civil War. But roughly, the weapons, how much would they would cost you?
The weapons by themselves? An infield is going roughly anywhere from $500 to $1,000.
And that's a reproduction, obviously.
Yes, that's
same
reproduction.
thing for
do any reenactors use real equipment?
Yes.
They do?
Yes. We've had it checked and still debating on it, but we're pretty sure the rifle that I use, the 1858 infield, is an original.
Oh, the one you use is an original
Yes,
weapon?
we're almost sure that it is.
Wow. And that's a museum piece. I mean,
yeah.
It really is. And we were talking again earlier about, you mentioned that, of course, you all do this in public gatherings. What are some of the public gatherings that festivals, schools?
Let's see, we've had a living history with Oktoberfest in Smithland.
Yeah, Salem Days in Salem, Kentucky. We've done march through parades at the Hunter's Moon Festival in Grand Rivers. We do a lot of parades, burial ceremonies, and memorial ceremonies in cemeteries.
Got a lot of schools.
Now, in just a few seconds, we're going to show you all talking about this. You represent the 6th Illinois Cavalry, which is a Southern Illinois outfit, Massac County, 3rd Kentucky Confederate Infantry, Paducah that Jackson purchased. And so basically what we have here, and I think this is one of the appeals of the Civil War. It's American against American, and in case of Kentucky, brother against brother, father against son. So now we have a cross-river rivalry. We've got the Illinoisan and the Kentuckian. Are we ready to have a look at these young men talking about this? So if you'll bear with us, I think you'll enjoy this.
I'm Alex Whitworth, portraying a trooper from 6th Illinois Company A in Massac County.
I'm Cody Sheets. I'm portraying a Confederate soldier of the 3rd Kentucky from the Paducah area.
All right, today we're going to talk to you about our equipment. So I'll start with my boots up. These are cavalry boots that the cavalry use. You can tell that there are only 2 pieces, that there's the ones that are correct are only 2 pieces, one in the front and one in the back. Sky blue pants. These trousers are have plenty of room for in the saddle. Move up to our your jacket, which is lined with gold, the color of cavalry. It's also a shell jacket. You can tell by the front here of the neck. Your belt, it's a sword belt. I have my saber and pistol. Carbine sling that I can hook my carbine onto. Canteen with haversack and my kepi, which has the cavalry cross sabers with 6 for 6 Illinois.
This is generally what a typical Confederate soldier would have wore in the field. As he said, I have my brogans, which is not boots. They only come up to your ankle, and typically it didn't really matter which feet they were wore on. You could put them on either one and they'd work just fine. I have the sky blue trousers. Under you have a vest, generally gray. And then you have your gray frock coat, which this style was worn by enlisted men. It's a single breast frock coat, buttons all the way up the front. If you was an officer, you would have wore a double-breasted frock coat, which had buttons on each side rather than up the center, and you could pin it back. If you was infantry, the inside would have been blue, which represented infantry, and cavalry yellow, and artillery red. But I have my canteen just as the Union soldier does, haversack, and I have my bayonet for my rifle. This is an 1858 London Armory British Enfield. The Confederate Armory imported hundreds of thousands of these throughout the Civil War because their guns was rather made. The Richmond was just a Confederate's version of the Springfield. But this is my cartridge box for my rifle. Inside it holds 60 rounds of your cartridges. This is your cap box, which holds your caps for the rifle. Without all this gun could not be fired. It just couldn't happen. And on my back, I have my knapsack, my blanket, which is my bedroll. And with the knapsack and the soldier on the march, we typically march 25 miles a day. Sometimes if you had a hard force march, we could get in 30 to 35, depending on the day, the weather, and your officers. But the soldier of me, the 3rd Kentucky, we would have carried on our backs what we needed because we had tents, but there's no telling where they was. Held up on supply wagons. They could be 50 miles from us, and of course you've got to rest throughout the day, so you just throw your bedroll down and sleep on the ground. I mean, it was a very rough time during the history of America, and these uniforms was not cool at all. I mean, everything is solid wool except for the shirt you wear under your vest, and it's usually a thick canvas or a thick cotton. Most of the time it was canvas because canvas was cheaper. But this is a blue cappy, same as the Union, except that is a harp, which represents Irish Brigade. I picked that up off of a Union soldier at Shiloh. But I will turn you back to the Union soldier and let him explain himself more to you.
Yeah, the difference in us, of course, he carries everything on his back. And as you can tell, I don't have, I mean, I have a lot of weapons, but everything I carried was on my saddlebag. So, you know, he would get wore out while I was carried by the horse and all my gear. And he didn't mention the trousers, but as you can tell that there's a lot of room. Back in the Civil War, the baggier the pants, the more in style it was. So the baggier they are, you were hip back then. You were in style.
With the baggy pants as well, of course, you'd get any breeze you could. And on a march, of course, you're moving your feet up marching. Air would go up through them, come up around, go up your coat, and it'd really cool you off what it could.
Yeah, there's not much cooling off. I mean, these are 100% wool. And I can feel the heat coming out of my shirt right now. They're really hot. It's definitely different from the clothes you wear now. There's no really explanation of how hot they are and how uncomfortable they are. Itchy. Right now I'm wearing skivvies under this, which the period underwear are basically just silk, which would all the way down from your ankles up. And that helped with the itchiness against your skin and the sweat.
But here for you, we're going to go through the manual of arms and the loading and firing of the weapon. Although, unfortunately, today we cannot fire the weapon. We're going to go through it and let you see, though.
All right. Attention. Shoulder, arms.
that was done in a 3-step motion. You're at order arms, you pick the rifle up with your right hand, grab the bottom with your left, push it back into your shoulder, grab it with your hands, one over the hammer or under, it doesn't really matter, and then you just take his hand and let it fall back to your left side.
Right shoulder shift, arms.
That is also a 3-step motion. From the shoulder arms position, you pick the rifle up in front of you, which is at present arms. Your eye should be looking between the first and second bends of your rifle. You grab it with your left hand, grab it with your left hand, take it up, turn it, force it back into your right shoulder, dropping your left hand to the side. That should be done in a 3-step motion as well.
And you want your lock to be up by your ear, if not, and keeping it not straight but at an angle, because when you're in columns of 2, if it was too back, he's gonna smack his partner in the head.
That is very uncomfortable when you're marching and you get smacked in the head. I have done so.
Support, arms.
That's done in a 3-step motion as well. All of the manual of arms done in the Civil War was in a 3 to 4-step motion. Most all was 3, depending on what theater of operations you was in and the commanding officer of the company. With support from right shoulder shift, you take the rifle out in front of you, turn it so that the trigger guard is facing you, put the hammer in the crook of your arm, grab the straps on your right side with your arm so that you can rest as you're walking. You could march all day like this, but throughout the marching, the officer would switch it up so as you wouldn't get tired of holding it in one place.
Yeah, you really could march for miles. All he'd have to do is grab a hold of that strap and help the weight on that strap on his shoulder so it'd be evenly balanced. And to help that out, there's another drill, rest. All he does is grab a hold of the butt or the stock of his gun and just helps him give some support on it. Port, arms.
That's also a 3-step motion. This was done for parade carries a lot or guard duty. If you was guarding a prisoner, you would more than likely have your rifle at port arms.
Present, arms.
This is the parade carry ceremonies, like burial ceremonies, and as an officer walks by, you could put your rifle at present arms to honor him, or if you was at shoulder arms, you would take your left hand and put it up like this to salute, since you can't do it with your right since you're holding your rifle.
Shoulder, arms. Order, arms. In place, rest. Now, this is how they would be if they were just taking a rest from marching and not actually sitting down. And when he's in place rest, he can move wherever he wants, but he can't move his left foot. And that's so when I call attention, he can bring it back and know where he's at. So in place rest. Attention. Inspection, arms. Right now we're going to check and make sure his weapon's actually working. So I'm going to turn so you can see. Put it on half cock. His half cock is working. This is actually the safety of this weapon. You can put it at half cock and it won't shoot. Pull it to full cock and then it'll fire. I'm going to check and make sure it's clean. We're also going to check and make sure he has caps and cartridges. Because when you're going to a battle, if they're empty, that was his fault. He's gonna get shot. That's just all there is to it. That's part of your duties, is to have cartridges and caps ready.
If you had cartridges missing, no matter what you did with them, whether you shot a deer or what, you would get put on report, and as the man said, a lot of times you would get executed.
All right, go through the loading procedure.
Yes, sir.
Load. Right now he is ready to fire. Some officers would say come to shoulder when ready, when you're ready to fire. You can see he bit the cartridge and threw it down because that's just waste of paper. He doesn't need it anymore. He stuck his ramrod in the ground, that way it's closer to him and it's faster loading. You're gonna make sure when you're ramming the ball down that it goes all the way to the bottom, or else the barrel would blow up in his face. So, make ready. Take aim, fire, recover, shoulder, order, arms. In place, rest. So, is there anything else you want to talk about the weapon?
The weapon itself, as you can tell, it's very long and it's heavy. It weighs about 11.5 pounds. And in that, you've got to carry that all day throughout battle to battle to battle. After a while, it gets heavy. But a rifle like this has a sight here which is adjustable up to 1,000 yards. It's got the front sight. Everybody thinks these weapons wouldn't do 1,000 yards. But on the battlefield, the first battles, they was used to the old 70 to 80 yards and 80 to 100 yards from the smoothbore weapons of the previous wars. Well, the soldier on the front rank soon realized these weapons was killing at 300 to 600 yards. It is possible to shoot an accurate shot at 1,000 yards with this weapon. I have done so. It takes time, and you have to know the weapon very good, get your powder charge right, make sure the round is seated good, and aim very good and carefully. Watch the wind. This round is heavy enough that wind don't bother it much, but if you got a good strong wind, it will throw it off. But if you aim carefully, you can hit a man-sized target at 1,000 yards if your eyes are good enough. Cleaning of this weapon, of course, black powder was a corrosive charge. After every battle, you would clean this weapon. Now, field cleaning, you would take out your cup right here. You'd get the water out of your canteen, pour it into the cup, set it on the fire, let it get boiling hot, and you would take the gun, either use a spent cap and put on the nipple, close it so water won't come out the nipple, take the water out of the cup, pour it down the barrel, put your thumb over the barrel, rock the gun back and forth as so, let it run out, and you would continue that process until the water comes out clear. Usually it takes 5 or 6 times. Then you would take a patch, and on your ramrod, as you can see, there's a little hole right there for patches. You would wad it up, put it through there, run it down the barrel until the barrel is clean. You'd have a clean musket ready for inspection in the next day's battle if there was one.
Another thing he didn't say about the weapon, it got really hot really fast. What do you think? About 10 rounds, that barrel is burning hot and burning his
Usually
hand.
about 10 rounds, and you cannot touch this barrel depending on how fast you load, how quick you shoot. And a lot of times, the stock up in this area is so thin, you can't hold on to it up here when you're loading. It's very dangerous and unsafe. So most of the time, you would hold right here where the wood is most thickest, but loading when the barrel is hot, a lot of times you would bite the end off the cartridge, dump it, and a round to go off in your fingers. That hurts. It's happened. But it took time to load, but a good soldier could get off 3 to 4 shots a minute. I am able to get off about 3.5. It just takes time, but it's how it was done. A lot of men died by this weapon and the tactics that we used during that time period. It was a rough time in that time of history.
All right, why don't you fix bayonets and we'll talk about the saber. Now the cavalry uses their saber to run through infantry and basically just cut them. A regiment of cavalry could cut through infantry where they're done. And people don't realize that, but cavalry could ride over and cut through infantry, and that eliminates the whole entire battle in a matter of minutes. So,
with the bayonet on the rifle, a lot of people seem to think you can't get away from it. Well, you can. If you're a cavalry with the sword, when you go to throw the sword out of the way and bring the butt of the rifle up, that leaves this side of the soldier open, which gives him the perfect opportunity to take the hilt of the sword and hit you in the head, in turns just running the sword through you. You got a dead soldier. But anyways, we're going to demonstrate this. See? It's very hard to fight a cavalry soldier with this weapon because it is so long and bulky. It's heavy. You can't throw it very fast. The saber weighs about 2 pounds, 3 at the most. Very, very good hand-to-hand combat weapon and up close.
And this is just dismounted cavalry. A mounted cavalryman would be a lot higher and would come through and just slash open a soldier, and they would be done.
If the cavalry was coming in on horses, mainly the only defense the infantry had was to shoot them off their horses before they got there, or you would get to a good stance, throw your rifle like this, and wait for the horse to lunge himself on it, and when he did, it would force the rifle down to the ground, and the horse would just lunge on it, which in turns it's going to take a while to get the rifle out of the horse because it's going to force the rifle and you on the ground as well.
That's if they could do that before the cavalry were there, because they could run 10 to 15 times more than what the infantry could get them. And even if they did stop the cavalry that way, they have no weapons, and the infantry could come in on them and they would have no way to defend themselves.
It was a very hard time in American history. From 61 to 65, 1861 to 1865, this is how the war was fought. It wasn't pretty, and it sure killed a lot of people. Out of all the wars, the American Civil War brought more casualties to the United States than any other war, for the simple reason we was fighting ourselves. It wasn't just soldiers getting killed, it was families at home, everything. I mean, when General Sherman marched to the sea, he burnt everything that was in his path. He didn't care, women, children, whatever, they died. And that's the real face of the Civil War.
So here we are, just across the river, fighting each other, and thank you for your time today.
Well, I enjoyed that. Thank you all very much for demonstrating that. Let's talk about just sort of the nuts and bolts of this. Obviously, there is no Civil War section at Dillard's where you can buy these uniforms. So if one were to get interested in this, where would you buy this equipment?
Well, there's a lot of different ways. You know, you can get on the internet. A lot of sutleries on there have websites. You go to an event and they'll have...
Of course, a sutler was a Civil War merchant. He traveled with the troops.
He traveled with the
troops.
troops.
So that's actually what you all call them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll have those set up at events. And there's actually a place around here that you can get stuff. Dixie Leatherwork in Paducah has some.
He has the leather goods like your backpack, your ammo pouches, belts, shoes, holsters, all your leather stuff.
Yeah. But one could get in a complete uniform for $200.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about that you didn't want to give the impression that it costs $1,000 or $2,000 to outfit yourself properly. So you could get.
Yeah, we've pieced together this over time. You know, we've got the more expensive gear just because we've been doing it all our lives. But yeah, one could get in for $200 for a complete uniform.
And you also have to be aware of eBay.
Yes.
Yes.
A lot of times eBay say it's a Civil War uniform, but when you get it, you'll realize it's Russian World War II, or it could even be modern.
And guys will show up to an event thinking they have Civil War gear, and it's completely wrong. And it's kind of hard to tell somebody you can't use that because they just spend a lot of money on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're gonna spend the money and do it, you know, go to somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, now you all obviously research these. You read books
Yes.
and diaries and, well, of course, I guess daguerreotype photos and engravings and that sort of thing too.
Me and my dad actually have a lot of books, like personal books from some generals and soldiers at home that we'll read and research and find a lot of stuff out, and quite a few of them actually have pictures in them so you can actually see what was going on. And we just use that and build on that from what we know. And it's just, even though we've been doing it for as long as we have, you never learn enough. You learn more at every one you go to. You learn something new.
You'll never know exactly what happened, you know, so you can always learn more.
One thing I noticed about your uniforms is they definitely look worn. I mean, you've got the look. It doesn't look like you bought that out of a box or from the sutler. Now, did this come from just years of you all doing this, or did you do something to age them?
No,
I mean, it just wear.
Wear. You can tell the dirt on my pants.
The grass stains.
Yeah, that's
because those trousers would have been a pretty bright sky blue, and they faded.
Well, I'll show you. You can tell here.
Oh,
that's the color they should be.
And notice too, you have on long underwear.
Exactly. Yes, that's actually the period skivvies that you would have worn.
Skivvies. Now that's an old World War II Navy term for underwear. So I guess that goes back farther than that. Then they got it from the Civil War.
Yeah, the Civil War. Because I mean, of course, Civil War. We had Navy too. That was the first war for the armored ironclads.
Right.
So.
And again, one of the things you talked that struck me as interesting was about the fact that the shoes, you could wear them either foot, and I had read that these were mass produced.
Yeah,
shoes.
straight last.
Exactly,
and that goes back to your buckle shoes using the French and Indian War, straight last. And if you'd have to switch them up, because if you wouldn't, they would shape to your feet, and then they would be left to right.
With mine, that's what's happened. I just never switched them up, so they've shaped to my foot.
So a soldier would deliberately switch his shoes.
So they wouldn't
every day.
Yes.
Every day
they'd be on a different foot.
Different foot. That way it would stay straight.
Wow. I mean, who would have thought of doing that? Well, I noticed, of course, you got a lot of brass. I mean, would you polish that brass much?
The cavalry would more so polish than infantry.
Yeah.
Because infantry was constantly moving. A lot of times they didn't want to be spotted, and of course you're marching through the woods, a shiny piece of brass.
Right.
The thing about cavalry, we're used a lot in parades, and even now modern. The police use it for crowd control, and cavalry has been used for that forever. Because when you see cavalry across the field, it's a big.
We're going to have to stop here. We're out of time. Thank you all for coming. Maybe we'll do this again sometime.
Hopefully so.
My guests were Cody Sheets and Alex Whitworth. I'm Barry Craig. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.
Thank you.